yes, I'm Nora McGregor from the British Library in London, and I hope there are a few library folk here as well, alongside the museum folk. So I'll start off explaining a little bit about the British Library. I never assume anybody knows that we are actually the National Library of the UK. And what that means is, by law, we receive a copy of every book that's published in the UK, which means we have a lot of stuff, even the bad stuff. And now the law has changed, so we're actually collecting the UK web domain. So we do big snapshots of any websites that have a UK ending to them, so .uk. And we ingest them, and we're storing them for future researchers. So I think the last one was around 80 terabytes, so it's a lot of information. And so physical items, we have quite a bit. We have over 150 million. I think now Wikipedia is saying 170 million. People throw these numbers out, you know. It's hard to count, but we have very huge collections. And this is an image of one of our storage units up, actually not in London, it's in Yorkshire. And if people are into architecture, it's one of the largest buildings to have low oxygen in a library facility in the world. So it's a bit experimental, hope it works. But yeah, so our collections grow by 3 million. We have a lot of physical stuff, and digitization and getting this stuff accessible online is obviously a huge priority for the library, because everybody can't come to London, although I wish they could. So I'm part of the digital research team, and we were started in 2010. And what's behind the digital research team being created was the influx of all this digital material and all of these digital collections. And also there was this new breed of researchers coming to the library, and they weren't just wanting to see one manuscript online so they could, or one book and read it. They actually wanted access to all of our books online so they could do analysis and do research at scale. So we're calling that digital research, and I'll show a few examples later about what that entails. And so I'll go back a little bit. So the core team has kind of expanded from 2010. So we were all digital curators. We had our own digital research team. Now you may have heard of a group called BL Labs. So we work with them as well. They're externally funded, and they work. They hold competitions for people to do interesting things with our digital collections. And that helps us to understand how creative folks and researchers want to use the collections. And I'll again go into that a little later as well. And then we also have other digital curators who are starting as part of digitization projects, and they're supporting digitization projects. And actually, Adi here was working with these folks on Micropasts, and so we hired her away. So yeah, so it's a nice, good little circle of friends here. So we work with academics and people in cultural heritage and technology for new ways to explore and access the collections. So going back just really quickly so I can understand a little bit about how we used Pybasa and why. So we describe digital research as essentially using computational methods to answer existing research questions. So this is a screenshot from a very old project, but kind of a very good example of what digital research can entail. And that was when they digitized letters from the 18th century Enlightenment. So like Voltaire, his letters to other philosophers and other people. And then they built a platform changing that information into data that can be analyzed. So you could see the time that he was sending different letters back and forth and where he was sending them, and coinciding with how his ideas had changed over time. And so it was just throwing up, by turning that information into data, it was making it easier to come up with new strands of research to pursue. And so that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about digital research. And one example from the BL Labs project recently, just as another kind of setting the scene of digital research, is we worked with a researcher who by hand, she was trying to find out where the Chartists, which was a political organization in the 19th century, they were trying to meet to get the vote for all men. So, hey, they were successful. And they met all around the UK, and she wanted to know where. And so she was going through, in the beginning, over 10 years, looking at microfilm of old newspapers, and then we digitized the newspapers and we put them online, and she was looking at them online and writing down the locations she found that were listed in particular columns. So when she came to BL Labs, she wanted to see if there was a way she could do that programmatically in a very quick way. And so our team worked with her and and she won the competition. So we worked with her, and we transformed the newspapers into data, and we had a Python code that is open source that people can use to extract from a particular column in that newspaper the meeting information that was happening. And then there's another piece of code that transforms that into location data and can plot it on a map. So this is the sort of thing that digital researchers are wanting to do, and the opportunities in front of us. But it's not just the physical items that need to be digitized. So there's other opportunities, especially for a library of our scale, and of course the National Library here in Madrid, to support researchers understanding how print culture changed over time, or why did we start publishing particular books? Was that in reaction to certain events? And how does what we decide to publish change over time, and what does that mean about who we are as a society? And libraries, of course, have huge catalogs, so that's ripe for doing that kind of research. And so we did a test at the library of music printing, and so looked at some of our electronic records relating to when music was printed in certain eras, and just as a test of could you approach history in this manner, and or the study of music history in this manner. And so you could see they plotted the rise and fall of, there are huge dips in the printing of music in Venice, which was spitting out huge amounts of music, and then it just sort of collapsed. And why was that? Well, if you go back, it looks like it was plague and war. So, okay. But that helps us to, it becomes the basis for more research. And so that's where Paibasa ultimately came in for one of our challenges at the library. So the British Library comes from the British Museum. We have huge, I don't know if anybody knows what this is behind me. This is a card catalog. So we have a lot of these. So this is very old school way of cataloging physical materials, and they're index cards that describe the stuff that's in our collection. So people today think that if you just go on an online catalog, you're going to find out what an entire library has. That's not true of the British Library. We have in this, just in this one collection area, 50,000 books in the collection that you have to come to the British Library and pull open this drawer if you want to find out what we have and see if we have this book in the collection. So that's a huge problem. That is 50,000 just in the Chinese collections. That people, if you are in China and wanted to come to London, you'd have to come here. You wouldn't know if we had the book or not. You could get a curator, I suppose, to try and look it up, but it's not feasible to carry on that way. And so the options in front of us, we were estimating we could hire someone and they could do the cataloging themselves they could probably get through 2,500 to 3,000 a year. Okay, well, that's just not going to work for us. Providing access this century would be nice. So, and that's, again, just that small collection. So, of course, we thought, well, let's look to the crowd. Can the crowd help us? And we're not strangers to crowdsourcing at the library either. So we had a few examples, and I'll show you at the end if you can follow us on Twitter, and I can put these links up there later so you can check them out. But one of the earliest forays was on georeferencing our maps. And maps are very popular, it turns out. So we hadn't even officially launched the project, and we built this georeferencer and we put 6,000 maps online, and we just, a tweet went out before the press release, and then they were done. And then the press release had to be changed to say, we had this project that just happened like 3 days ago, and it's done. So we know the power of the crowd. And we do other kind of crowdsourcing things. So this was collecting sounds from around the country to see the shore sounds. I was going to play some very calming wave music, but check it out later. And then another one that we did recently was trying to get people to tag 1 million images that we had gotten out of a huge digitization we had done of 19th century books. So that we digitized 68,000 books, we pulled the images out programmatically, but then we just had a big dump of very cool but undescribed images. And so we asked the crowd to help us to tag those, and that's kind of ongoing. But the challenge of the cards was a unique one for us. So it wasn't the typical kind of crowdsourcing situation we had discovered before. And so we were very thankful for Paibasa existing, because we had this idea and not a lot of resource to accomplish it. And this was the original kind of sketch of what we wanted. So luckily in the modern times, especially for libraries, we're not all cataloging from scratch. So if a publisher is publishing a book, it's called OCLC, and it's an organization of libraries, it's international, and we all share catalog records. So if a publisher publishes a book, we all don't have to retype the title, we don't have to start from scratch. The book will always have a title, it will always have these features of the book that are describing it. But what you do need to add is your own location information for your library. So the shelf mark, where they can find it on a shelf and how it can be located. So for the base records, OCLC has those, and we wanted to come up with a way that we could let the crowd make a link and do the search for us between OCLC's big repository of card catalogs and what we had. And so this is the process, but I'll just show you the interface. It's a little easier. So when you get outside this room, look up LibCrowds and do some cards. So we digitized the card catalogs, so we did 50,000, and we're working our way through them. And what you see, and we're doing the different languages as well. So we're doing Indonesian. We have several projects now starting because everybody wants in on it. But we have the original card catalog that you saw in the drawer. And what people can do now is come online, they can try and do a lookup. So if you enter in what you think is the title on this card, and you see right away, I mean, I bet maybe a couple of you know Pinyin, but you don't really need to even know the language. You're just kind of guessing and trying to make a match. So you might say, that looks like an author, so I'm going to type that in, and then you do a search, and it's actually searching OCLC. So why we loved Paibasa was, I don't know if you said this, but I saw plugins, but plugins is what was important to us. So it was very, there's different software out there, but the plugins part was crucial because we wanted to write a bit of code that would do the lookup in the OCLC database. And so Paibasa allowed us the flexibility to just do that. So we had Alex Mendez is the technical lead on this, and he basically built this thing, and very quickly. And so that's LibCrowds, and this was a little video. And so essentially we ended up so far with 5,000 records that we're very happy with matches from OCLC matching our card catalogs. And in the spirit of, am I? Hello? Okay, sorry. I don't want to blast you guys out of the room with my American accent. And also all the data, so all of the images that we took of the catalog records, who knows? I have no idea if anybody ever wants to have pictures of Pinyin and Indonesian card catalogs, but they're online, anybody can use them if they want. And just in the same spirit of Pipasa, we want everything to be open, and so the plugins that we created, well, that Alex created, are all shared on GitHub, and they're open, and anybody else can use them, and we're happy to help other libraries who want to try and set up something similar. And we don't put any copyright on anything, so it's all open for anybody else to use. And since launching, we have 10 projects on in total, 6 are completed, and each project had about 1,000 in it so far. 1,000 cards to do, between 1,000 and 1,500. Essentially, we've gotten nearly 5,000 new catalog records, which we think is a complete success. Just absolute, couldn't be happier. Well, we could be happier with 50,000 being done. And so we've had participants all over the world. And, you know, the lessons learned, though, you can't do anything with crowdsourcing unless you're going to have a strategy for sustaining it. So we saw the effects of, you have one popular blogger, curator at the library, there's a huge leap when they connect with their crowds and their people and advertise this, and it just spikes and spikes. But it's really hard to keep that momentum, and so that's our next kind of challenge, because we know the functionality is there, people are doing it, but now it's just putting the effort around a real social media structure to get the word out and do that. So we're working on that, and getting the buy-in from the greater, you know, the huge collection areas and the curatorial staff to really own this and run with it as their project. And, you know, they're absolutely keen to have people be able to find these items. So we just got to get the right balance. So the next thing was, there were some times where, I guess this is the future of the thing we're working on right now, and it's not quite finished yet, but it's getting there. But we have in the workflow, so there's not always a match. So we have 3 people have to come up with the same information and have to choose the same card to represent our card. And when there is a mismatch or nobody can find it, and so they're saying skip, not found, I can't make the connection. We have those saved, but now we're trying to figure out what's the next step for us to fix that situation. So the next one is a transcription task that we're exploring, and they've just built that, but it hasn't launched yet. Soon, imminently, I'll let you all know when it's online. But yeah, so that's our next one. So I think that's it. We're gonna have questions, so I'm sure I skipped over a lot of detail, but this is all of our information, and we'll just share it. You don't have to write it down. But yeah, thanks.
Preguntas, animaros.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sí.
Oh, she needs to have the microphone too. We don't actually know. So you don't, you have to sign in, but you can essentially be anonymous, so we won't know who the contributors are. I know from a different project, so the Flickr one where we let it out, we had a very interesting situation where we had computer scientists were taking the images, downloading them from Flickr, and running their own search algorithms over them, or tagging algorithms, and then uploading the tags back. But then we also had a guy out in California who had a terminal illness and was in bed, and you know, he's not even English, he's just out in California, and was almost adding as many tags as the computer scientists' programs were able to do. And it was like neck and neck for a while there. We were like, it's man versus machine. And we were trying so hard to find out who he was. And we were kind of emailing him through the system, and because we wanted to say thank you, and we were going to give him a reward. And he said, the reward is just doing it, and I just love that I have something to do, and I'm contributing to society from my bed. So you have the whole range of people, and we could have never found that guy without just putting it out there, on the major, in society. So, yeah. Sorry.
Mejor español, inglés. Okay, I'm gonna ask in Spanish, so they will translate for you. Mi pregunta viene al hilo.
Oh, she's not getting the sound from that microphone.
Oh,
Sorry. It's that microphone.
maybe now?
Now.
Vale.
She said, comes in the speakers in the room, but not to her in that room.
She doesn't.
Okay, well, I can also
Ask in English.
ask in English. Okay. So, what was it? I was wondering if you help the crowd do their work just distributedly, or if you also host physical gatherings like digitathons, or if people come together to do the stuff together.
Let me translate. Ella ha preguntado si realmente hicieron grupos de trabajo en la biblioteca, o que se juntaron personas para trabajar conjuntamente, o si fue todo digitalmente, en cada uno en casa con internet.
For this one, we haven't, but for so we do a lot of hackathons with updating Wikipedia. So we had a Wikipedian in residence, and whenever we have a new collection that goes online, we were hosting days where Wikipedians could come in, look at the collection items, meet curators, and then together update the information on Wikipedia, start new pages, and it was a really nice kind of just getting to know the public, that sort of thing. So that is still crowdsourcing, because we're not writing those pages, but that we felt that's more conducive, because you have the curator saying, here's what I know about this object, and people are learning together. So, but you could do that, I mean, with something like this, have free pizza or something, I don't know.
Por seguir en el hilo, nosotros con otras instituciones, por ejemplo con el Instituto de Enfermedades Tropicales Suiza, con el Instituto de Enfermedades Tropicales en Suiza, hicimos un proyecto con ellos para ayudarles a encontrar. Han desarrollado una trampa contra los mosquitos de la malaria solar, entonces fueron a África, en ciertos sitios donde no hay ni carreteras ni nada, y era muy difícil para ellos saber si habían visitado todas las casas. Era clave, porque si no dabas esa trampa, al final estabas condenando a una familia a poder infectarse con el mosquito. Entonces vinieron a nosotros, y lo que hicimos con nuestra tecnología fue que la gente colaborara en las mismas áreas con imagen de satélite y marcar dónde creían que había casas. Gracias a esto compararon los datos de los terrenos, porque no había otra manera de poder acceder a esas localizaciones, con los lugares que ellos tenían. Y bueno, se dieron cuenta que habían perdido muchas casas. Entonces, una de las cosas que hicieron, tienen jornadas de puertas abiertas, normalmente museos, instituciones, y fue un gran éxito. De hecho, ese día fue cuando se terminó el proyecto. O sea, la gente vino, era algo muy social y muy interesante, y ayuda mucho. Entonces, yo creo que es básicamente que todas las instituciones se benefician de ambas cosas. Tienes que tener una parte física y una parte online que ayuda a que cualquier persona en cualquier parte del mundo pueda colaborar. Pero la parte de juntarse también es muy interesante. ¿Más preguntas? Sin miedo.
So I didn't show it, but we have, when two matches are made. There's a series of files that you can download, so, and they're all on, you can see for yourself on the actual platform. There's a little zip file, and so the curator can look over the results of what's happening. And another clever thing the technical lead did was make a little spot check sheet, and so it's just a PDF, but it shows the original one and what the result was, so you can just quickly look through and say, well, is this way off, or are we generally, and then there is just, you have to accept a bit of risk. So for us, we felt comfortable, okay, if it's the wrong thing, then a researcher is going to tell us. We know that much, and then we'll fix it. But it's better that we have something up that's even like kind of remotely talking about the potential of this book being in our collection than nothing at all. So you have to have a little appetite for error, I suppose.
En esa línea, la tecnología tiene también una parte de análisis estadístico. Entonces, ella ha comentado antes que revisan cada tarjeta 3 personas. El número de personas que puede revisar cada proyecto varía. Luego podemos preguntar a Chiara y a Jennifer, porque al final lo vas adaptando a cada proyecto. Entonces la calidad depende, pero bueno, hay una parte de análisis estadístico que en algunos proyectos lo hacen más fáciles, en otros es un poco más complejo y te permite crear esos resultados canónicos o únicos que resumen las contribuciones de la gente. Siempre decimos, si el 95% de las personas que han participado dicen que esa tarjeta pertenece a este libro, hombre, varía en función de la cantidad de resultados que tengas, pero normalmente por defecto son 30 personas, la gente luego lo va adaptando a las necesidades de cada proyecto.
So the question is beyond, you mentioned very appropriately that if you don't have a proper communication strategy, then probably people will not notice that they can do that. So what was your communication strategy beyond this blog that you mentioned? Was there anything else? Did you think it out, or?
Well, we're working on that right now. So what we definitely need to make sure we do before doing the project again, or having different collections go online, is to articulate that the curatorial staff, someone needs to manage this very actively. And so it was very successful, but now we're struggling to find people who want to keep the momentum up, to keep, finish the 50,000, because people get carried on to other jobs and that sort of thing. So we have to look at different strategies. It might be that you do a push with interns, or it could be as part of PhD placements, working it into activities already being undertaken. But that's certainly something that's under review right now. And it's something we have to have that structure in place, and the commitment and the role defined before continuing to launch things. So that's what we're working on now. I wish I had the magic answer, but it's in progress.